Hello, everyone. I'm Captain Logan, and I've got Austin the Day Ghost as always. And it's time for part 12 of our top 100 favorite superhero movies of all time. Yeah, we're still doing this. We'll see how far we can get for another hour of our rousing discussion of movies that don't make sense to put on a top 100 if you're Austin.
Hey, other way around, good sir.
Yeah, I
have
said
the
it.
definitive list.
I said it. Well, some of them track, and
All of them.
some of them feel like you're just being trolled. But then that's been my whole relationship with Austin. So I'm just kidding. I respect your choices, but I don't always understand them.
That's okay. Who knows why madmen do what they do?
Austin, out of 100 movies, put all of the Toxic Avenger films, and we finally are going to review one in the not-too-distant future.
And the remake finally got a release date this week. Or I don't know if it has a specific date, but it finally got a distributor.
Yeah, and do you know why that is?
I don't.
Because we announced we're reviewing one of those.
Of course.
That's why that happened. And we're doing the commentary tomorrow night for Constantine, and that's why that has a steelbook and a 4K coming out next month. Because when we announce things, we suddenly discover that there's some major development happening with it, either a sequel or a new release or something. Every time we review something, this happens.
It's finally coming out. Something.
Yeah, something. Anyway, so we are at... Austin, you said number 26. Did we do 26, or is that just the number we were on?
26 is the next one that we're on, because my 27 was Lone Ranger, which was the last one that I said.
Okay. And as I mentioned, I almost actually included that, but it would have been like 99 or 100.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Austin has been going first each time, so we'll let him start this time again, and I expect most of these to be, at least on my end, you're going to see a lot of the big, obvious heavy hitters. I think from now on, it will be hard for me to surprise you. There might be a couple of things, but I think a lot of this is going to be, yep, we've been waiting for those, like, on Cap's list. We knew that would show up somewhere. Austin could be a little bit more of a...
wild card.
Of a wild card, yeah.
Yeah, which is perfect, because my 26 is one that I think people will be surprised to see at 26.
Because it's too high or because it's too low?
I feel like most people would think it would be higher on my list.
Okay, let's see what it is. Well, you already shocked us with Howard the Duck and how low that was. So.
I know, and I still feel bad about that. I have like a gut feeling where I'm like, that should have been higher.
Right,
but I can't take it back now.
Lay it on a certain... Dude, I've had that with things where I'm like, I want to move this around.
Mm-hmm.
See, because we're having to converse with our, like, 6-month younger selves. We've been at this for so long.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, lay it on us, sir.
My number 26 is Guardians of the Galaxy.
That is shocking.
I know.
How did that wind up that low? Now, if memory serves, you do rank the sequels both higher at this point.
Well, and always, yeah. No, I like the first Guardians movie quite a bit.
Well, I just say at this point because 3 came out. Like...
Oh yeah, no, fair enough. I like the first Guardians. I do think it's Gunn's weakest post like going mainstream. I think,
and I don't agree with that at all, but that's fine.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I mean, Creature Commandos might be a little bit under the first Guardians at this point, but
yeah, but now you're comparing series to movies.
Yeah, exactly. No, it becomes hard. No, my thing with Guardians of the Galaxy is I think it's a great introduction film, and I just don't think it has the same weight that the sequels do, where it can just be more about these characters. Like, it is more of a simple, like, standard mainstream MacGuffin adventure.
Yeah, that's true. Just on a plot level.
Yeah, and, like, obviously, it's setting the stones for where the characters will go, and I do appreciate it for that, and I do think it does a good job of that. But it walks so that the sequels can run, I think.
Yeah, sometimes it has to do with just what resonates with you, I guess.
I mean, it's also got like a killer ending with the mom stuff. Like, it is a good movie on its own. That's why it's still my 26.
I
Uh,
think the simplicity of it actually helps turn it into a tighter narrative than those other two movies, where they are much more ambitious, and I don't think either of them collapses under the weight of themselves. Certainly,
mhm.
and I'm not saying that Gunn should have necessarily held himself back too much with them either. But I do think there's just kind of a tightness with that first movie that is maybe impossible to recreate again with a sequel when you're expanding your roster, and when you're continuing on story threads, and when it becomes a series besides a singular film. I mean, it kind of has the Iron Man thing in a way for me. Like, one of the reasons I like that first movie more than the other two is just it's a singular piece, and by definition, a sequel can't be that. That you know,
Yeah, yeah. I guess it just depends on like what you're going in for. I think
yeah.
especially two, but to a lesser degree three. Um, it just I don't know. They let the characters play. Like it's not as focused on okay, like we have to keep moving on the plot. Um, it's much more like okay, like let's just live with these people. While the first film, I think, is a little too hampered for me in having to be like a very standard plot. But at the same time, as I said, like it does it really well.
Well, I like how singular character focused that is, because it's an ensemble film. Like, obviously it's a team movie, but more than the other two, and more than probably any other team movie in Marvel's stable, it is about one guy, and
Yeah,
that's one
no,
of the
it
things
is
I
much more the Star Lord
that's one of the
movie.
things I really like about it.
hmm Yeah, I agree. Like it's, I mean, that's in the way that it is like the setup film of the trilogy, and I think as far as setup films go, like it is one of the best ones. Um, but like you only get like a little bit with each of the other characters that we can build off of, and like Robert said, I also think it has Gunn's worst villain, and
Yeah, no, it
Ronan's
does,
fine.
and it just wasn't about the villain for me, so it was easy to dismiss that.
No, of course, but like Ego's my favorite MCU villain, so like, and I really like the High Evolutionary as well, and I really like Starro. So it's like his other films after Guardians don't have like as obvious of a weak spot for me, where I'm like, okay, well, like here's this aspect that doesn't work that well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the things that make the other two movies work too are foundational with the first movie in the first place, and so it's really easy for me to I to a I don't know what word I'm looking for, to revere it more. Like the way it innovates, the way it managed to, like, there's a history breaking thing with that I always give it massive credit for, where it is not easy to make the whole universe care about characters that have always been kind of D-list in comics,
hmm
and to make it like kind of a whole generation Star Wars. Like, Guardians
Yeah.
is not a small part of why the MCU was such a success.
No, and I fully respect that. Like, I had a conversation when three came out with my dad where, because I saw it before he did, and he was like, how does it fall? And I was like, well, I think for me it goes 2, 3, 1. And he goes, "Oh, like one's clearly the best." And I was like, "Yeah, but this is why I think two is a better movie." And he was like, "Yeah, but one I didn't have expectation for, so it blew me away in a way
Yeah,
that two didn't." And I'm like, "Okay, I can respect that.
yeah,
Like
that's
that's perfectly fair."
that's exactly what I had.
I also think two and three are just better looking movies. I think there's like a darkness to the first film in its cinematography that I don't like as much, and it's something that I didn't really have until the sequels came out, where I was like, oh, I like the look of these a little bit better. And I know that Gunn had a hard time with his cinematographer on the first film, so like he did have issues with that.
Oh, interesting. I thought that was intentional, just on, like, a character and thematic level. That, like, it's
But
not
it
it's
could
not
be
allowed
too.
to it's not allowed to get brighter until these people become a family. Like, I was kind of liked it for that.
Yeah, for sure. No, I also think he's just gotten more and more comfortable as a director just as he's gone.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Even like after two, like I think, with the Suicide Squad and then Guardians 3, like I think he's just become a better director with each movie.
And there's also not, and I won't talk about this movie too much when I finally get to it because
It's going to be a lot higher on your list.
we've talked about it now, but or at least I'll try not to. We might forget that we did it. But I also don't know that there is another movie I've ever seen that handles its incidental music as a driving force for the story as well as that movie does. And that's a lot of it for me too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I feel like we're at a point where all of these movies are movies I like a lot. So while I'm probably sounding more down on it, like it's more so just to justify why I have it lower, because like this is a really good movie.
Yeah, because it's low out of a list of 100, but like 26.
Mhm.
It's not low.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, my 26 it features the other Peter at Marvel, amusingly, and I don't know why there are two major characters in Marvel named Peter, but my 26 is Spider-Man: Homecoming, which I still declare as the best live-action Spider-Man movie, and I wish the sequels had built on its foundation better. But it is, and it's not a thing, Austin, that I've gone back to as much as I ought to. I think partly just because I was kind of bummed with the direction they took it.
No, that's fair. That's a movie I've seen like a billion times.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so my youngest brother, when that comes out, is 6, and that was like, oh my God, this is the greatest movie I've ever seen. Like that's all I want to watch from now on. And you would think that would ruin it for me, but no, I agree. I do think it's also my favorite live action Spider-Man.
I think Tom Holland is the best actor for Spider-Man in that we've had so far, in capturing the real traditional high school Peter Parker. It was nice to finally get a movie that entirely took place in high school and have
a movie that sorry, go ahead.
And have a cast of teenage characters that are real believable and likable and kind of fun to be around. I've made this point a lot. I wish it was a TV show, but of course it can't be a TV show, which is one of the things that's irritating about the space in between them and not getting as far in the story as I want to. But
no, and it's crazy that it took that long to get a Spider-Man film that actually revolves around Peter Parker's choices.
Yeah,
like that's wild.
yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, you would think that would be something that came with like the first one.
Yeah, it is somewhat, but more superficially, and like it talks about that stuff more than it actually puts it on the screen. But you're right. Like Homecoming is a lot more about actions and consequences, and the way the villain plot is handled, with the Vulture and Peter Parker's story weaving in and out of that is just really traditional old school Stan Lee stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And they took one of my least favorite of like the big mainstream Spider-Man villains, and they made him like my second or third favorite MCU
villain. Yeah,
that's
and
crazy.
It helps that you got Keaton, because of course I love Keaton, and I love Keaton as an antagonist. But he's also really good on the page. Like Keaton had plenty to work with. Like it's cool he's in the RoboCop remake, but that movie sucks. Like it's not just because Keaton's there.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's wonderfully sympathetic, and you get why he's doing what he's doing, and I like the like street level government and big business like down on the man stuff. in that. And I like the, now that I'm thinking about it, like just the like grander action and consequences, not just with Peter Parker, but with the MCU coming down on the little guy in general. Like it sort of felt like Michael Keaton's character steps out of the Netflix shows, because they were all about that, you know, like you've got the big alien battles and stuff, and then you have the street level things and how it's affecting that, and they aren't really talking to each other, and then you get Homecoming and they are.
Hmm. Yeah, and it also has maybe my favorite sequence in a Spider-Man movie, which is that first montage when he puts on the costume, and it's like, here's all the mundane things he's doing in Queens. Like, he stops like a bike thief and gives a woman directions.
Yeah, that stuff was kind of missing
Yeah, that's
before.
yeah. It was Pusha DX said they could have used the title "Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man," and I agree, because I feel like that's the one that kind of gets that the most, which is funny because it's also the first Spider-Man movie to leave New York.
Oh yeah, and I always forget about that.
Not that we're gone for like a while, but I've also always liked that choice as well, because like you do get that not like a ton in Stanley's run, but like he is going places like outside of New York. Like you have like it's like a 2-issue
And real early.
Yeah, exactly, because like you have it with the Lizard, you know, where he goes to Florida, and then there's like a 2-issue break where he goes to, I think, Atlanta and fights Doc Ock.
And we're talking to the first 10 issues.
Hmm. Yeah, like at least in like the first 15. Exactly.
But yeah, and then Iron Man as kind of the stand-in for Uncle Ben and the Mentor works really well. I wish we had any talk about Uncle Ben, but I like the way he works in that. And I know there were folks that really didn't care for that and didn't like that it turns into a passing of the torch movie. But it's a really cool companion piece to the first Iron Man movie. That's one of the things I've always really appreciated about that. Is there's some really neat character parallels between those two in their first like major time out in costume, and there's some really cool comparison contrast stuff.
Well, I think that's another place where it's hurt by having to move forward, where it's got the perfect ending where they're like, okay, now you can move up to the big leagues, and he's like, no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm Spider-Man. But the next thing has to be Infinity War, and I'm fine with how they handle that, where he gets dragged into it. But it is unfortunate that the very next sequence we get with Spider-Man is, okay, and now he puts on the armor that he just refused. So that's a little lame, but whatever.
Yeah, and it's cool in contrasting those characters to see like how similar but really different also they are in personality. That like Peter Parker has some of the same arrogance in having at least some of the brilliant scientist thing that Tony Stark does, and also Tony Stark when we first meet him is acts kind of adolescent, and Peter Parker just isn't adolescent. And so it's kind of neat that you've got the kid who's like totally broke but still has some of that same kind of Tony Stark arrogance, and the Tony Stark who has learned the big lessons all the hard way, having to teach him the same things that he learned the hard way when he didn't really have anybody to carry him along, and he wouldn't have listened to that person anyway. But I've always loved the if you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it speech. That's one of the best like lessons and speeches in a superhero movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I also like we obviously all know the meta title with Homecoming, but I also like that it's named after a homecoming dance that he ultimately doesn't go to. Like he's there for like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And then leaves to be Spider-Man. Like that's so perfect.
Like you would expect that to be the big action set piece.
Yeah, exactly. Like their fight would somehow come down on the dance or something.
And we've seen that in so many like high school pseudo superhero shows that I'm really glad it didn't go there. You know, like that's the Buffy thing to do. That's the Smallville thing to do. It's kind of cool that it uh, subverts that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway,
Yeah.
what is your 25?
My 25 is the first Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes.
Wow, I'm surprised that's that high.
Yeah, so this is one where I'm like I haven't seen it in a few years, so if I rewatch it, there's a chance it shoots down. But uh like I really liked that movie when I was younger, like in high school. And like thinking about it, I'm like, okay, well, here's all the stuff that I remember liking about it, and I didn't get a chance to rewatch it, but yeah, I don't know. I really like that movie. I think the mystery's fun. I think the action's really cool. Downey and Jude Law are really great in it. Oh my god, I'm blanking on the guy who plays the villain. Oh my goodness, he's in like every Matthew Vaughn film. He's the villain of Shazam. He's Sinestro.
Yeah, I don't remember his name.
Yeah, I can't think of what his name is, but oh, Mark Strong. There we go. I got it.
Good job.
I think he's really good as the villain in that. And, unlike the second one, it actually is a mystery film.
And I've never seen the sequel, and I've only seen that first movie like once or twice.
Mm-hmm.
So the only reason they're not on mine probably is because I have not seen that first one in forever, and I have never bothered with a sequel. I'll do it at some point. And I've always agreed that those count. I just don't know them that well.
No, that's completely fair. That was what got me into Sherlock Holmes as a kid. I was like, yeah, when did that first one come out? 2009. Okay, so yeah, I'm 12 when that comes out. So yeah.
My number 25 is also Robert Downey and is the first Iron Man, which is maybe a little low as I'm looking at my list. But it's fighting with a few other MCU things, certainly, for dominance. I don't feel like the MCU opened with their very best movie. I think there are some other things that, at least for my taste, and also I think just on a sophisticated story level, eclipse it. But we've talked about this 100,000 times, but along with Dark Knight in 2008, that was pushing massive envelopes. And it is a lot of fun to go back to now. Like, when that comes out in '08, it feels really revolutionary, and there's this, like, again, like we were talking about with Guardians, there's this simplicity and there's this kind of quaintness to it now, going back to it. So, like, it's aged nicely, but I kind of like how, I can't think of a better word to use, just old-fashioned it feels at this point. Like, I miss when that was contemporary, when that was new. Like, it would be dumb to say it's not commercial. It's not commercial in the same way that they are now. It doesn't feel formulaic until you get to the third act, and then it starts to remind you of other superhero movies. And as we've talked about before, it helps that, and this shouldn't have worked, which is one of the reasons I love it so much. It helps how much of that movie is ad-libbed. It just feels really, at least when you put it up against other superhero movies from the time, it feels really experimental.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you said you had it low, but I actually had it like around here initially, and then I rewatched it and went, "Oh, okay, this is one of the best viewings I've ever had of this
Wow.
in a long time."
And so it winds up higher.
So it ended up bumping it up higher, but no, I think that's completely fair. You're right. There is like a punk rock energy to that film when it comes out.
And it helps to really set the precedent for character-driven superhero movies, where it doesn't feel like it's a costume superhero thing first. Like, if it doesn't appeal to children at all, there's still a big adult audience for that. It feels like a movie for grown-ups until it kind of degenerates into more of a typical superhero thing in the third act.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, I still remember seeing it in the theater, and one of the craziest things, uh, just seeing a superhero film at the time was like when he lands in the Middle East, when you first get him in like the red and gold suit, and like
Yep.
even now, like when I rewatch it, I'm like, this is crazy. That is a very post 9/11 film. Like it happens at like the exact right time for like something like that to have happened. Where I don't think they would touch that now.
No, and it makes it feel like it felt a little more poignant coming out post 9/11 maybe than it would have before that. Just doing such a uh, I don't want to say militaristic, but such a military bent character then, as opposed to if you'd done it in like 98 or 99.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
Because there is that question at that point, like, uh, how does this quaint noble idea of superheroes fit into this more complicated world of the mid to late 2000s where we're not even always sure who the bad guys are.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
And
And
that fits so nicely. Sorry, that fits so nicely with the idea of Tony Stark selling weapons, because easily, uh, you could easily sell to like both sides in a conflict and not even know like who the good guys are supposed to be.
mhm. Yeah, I think that kind of takes it back to the roots of Iron Man in a way. Where like originally he was selling weapons in Vietnam, and then the tide of that war publicly turned real quick after Iron Man's created.
I would also put it in the my top five probably, and maybe we should do this list at some point, Austin, of like honest to god good superhero origin stories, because you know how critical I am of that,
Hmm.
and how often we waste a whole movie on origin when we should have just gotten past the here's how the person, or here's how the hero got their powers, or here's how the hero first came up with their suit or whatever, and we're just like hand holding an audience, delivering basically 2 hours of concept. That's what Tim Story's Fantastic Four movie is, and instead of like telling a real story with it. And the superhero movies that do both are kind of few and far between. And there are a lot more of the decent ones now than there were when I was first complaining about this back when I started Superhero Rewind, where most of the origin movies were kind of a waste. And then it was really a problem when they didn't get sequels, because you could see the potential in it.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and even then, I feel like there's probably only like a handful of like really good ones that have come out since you were originally saying that.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe less bad ones, but only because we have like slowly moved away from that.
Well, to the MCU's credit, they almost never make a movie that doesn't start in an origin place, and uh, at least before you get to Phase 4, because then it's a lot more hit and miss. Most of their first outings are pretty decent, and most of them are also origin movies. So like Guardians is we've got to get the family together, and First Avenger is we've got to make him a super soldier and get him in his costume, and like they all do it, and like even Doctor Strange, like
But Doctor
I
Strange is
I
like the
didn't
last one.
I didn't need to sit through a whole Doctor Strange origin, but they did a decent job with it.
Mhm. Or sorry, not the last one, because I'm like ignoring Phase 4 and forward in my
Do you
brain.
just mean that's the
But
last good one, or
I mean, it is the last good one. But I was just thinking because then you have like Spider-Man and Black Panther, which aren't. But no, like Shang-Chi, I guess, is
that's
technically
true. Spider-Man and Black Panther do
maybe.
manage not to be, but that's because those characters are introduced in other movies.
Hmm.
There's
That's what I
not.
meant. Is like I feel like we do that more now.
That's true, because we allowed the Avengers movies to start introducing characters. Or at least I guess one of those is Captain America movie, but you know what I mean, like the bigger ensemble movies. But there's not a character that they first introduced to us in its movie that's not an origin, with the exception of Incredible Hulk. Mm-hmm. And I think that's only because there had been a Hulk movie, even though it's not that movie, or that franchise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because even
I mean, that's part of it with Spider-Man. I think
even like Captain Marvel does it.
Yep.
And Captain Marvel should have been introduced in a different movie and then given its movie, I think. But
no, I agree with that. She was almost in Age of Ultron.
And Spider-Man was almost in Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
They were going to introduce them.
People thought he was going to be
right at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think people were kind of biting their lip waiting to see what new characters were going to be introduced in the last scene of that movie. And then it was just, here's a new Avengers team of characters that you know, and then we never saw them fight together as a team. Like, that never happened.
Do you remember, though, the leaked Age of Ultron Spider-Man post-credit scene?
Huh.
Where it's Avengers Tower, and there's a guy cleaning the window, and then Spider-Man lands on the wall, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, you missed a spot." And
was it fake?
Yeah, like it was fake. But I remember people were freaking out, like, "Oh my God, Spider-Man's gonna be in this movie!"
Well, it's just crazy to think how far we've come, and all the things that some of us were really wanting to eventually see in MCU and didn't know if it would ever happen because nobody really predicted the Fox buyout.
Yeah,
at least to happen when it did. But even before that, there were those rumors that you were going to have the Oscorp logo, like the building in the first Avengers movie. Like there was talk about some of these things, at least as Easter eggs, like really early.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, going back to Iron Man, there's the now released alternate version of the Nick Fury cameo.
Yeah, where he mentions
radioactive spiders and mutants.
Yeah, and
it's a really awkward scene.
Yeah,
God they cut it.
I'm glad, because they didn't even have the rights to that stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, Darren Dooley puts in a $5 super chat and says, do you see Dark Knight and Iron Man, both 2008 movies, as post 9/11 films? Compare and contrast. Do they have different takes on that event? We talked about the 9/11 thing a little bit already, but yeah, Iron Man a little bit more so than Dark Knight. With Dark Knight, it's more of kind of like the flavor of it than it like specifically tackling terrorism in the same way. Like, Joker's got a domestic terrorism thing going on that arguably you could have still done pre 9/11, but it does feel a little informed by that, and then it tacks on the wiretapping thing right at the end.
That's what I was gonna say. Is I feel like Dark Knight to me has it more, but I can see it from both sides, because I think Iron Man has it more throughout, while Dark Knight has the biggest, like, oh yeah, this is the exact era we're in thing with that.
Well, and as much as I like Dark Knight, I feel like that aspect of it is more just naturally integrated in Iron Man, and that's also kind of just easier with that material, whereas with Dark Knight, it feels a little tacked on to me.
Yeah, and I've heard people, especially now, say like it feels a little heavy-handed.
Mm-hmm.
Which I can understand.
In the theater back in the day, I thought the wiretapping thing was heavy-handed.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, why are we suddenly having a moral speech about this of all? This hasn't been in the movie anywhere, and this is like a 2-hour and 20-minute movie or whatever it is, and we're this late in the game, and suddenly we're talking about this. And Lucius Fox is taking this big stand, like, if this is what we're doing, I'm not going to be involved anymore. And I'm like, where did any of this come from?
And then Batman stands in front of his mission accomplished sign. his Bat mission accomplished sign.
Austin, what is your 24?
My 24 is Dredd. Which I think we talked a little bit about when you got to it, so I won't.
I had it pretty low because I haven't seen it in forever. But
yeah.
I did love that movie when it came out.
No, it's a really fun action film, and it's a shame that it bombed because you could have easily done more with it. And I feel like at this point now, like it should be a streaming show.
It was supposed to be.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
I feel like
Carl
that's kind of the
Urban
perfect
worked
place for it.
really hard to make that happen. I think he was negotiating directly with Netflix, maybe trying to make that happen.
Hmm. I should get it at Prime. He's got an in there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe that could finally happen at some point.
Yeah, and I
I
mean
mean,
at
that's
this
a guy
point,
that doesn't age.
yeah, and he's got like a mask on, so it's not like you can see him. And he's gonna fight to never take it off. So
I know. I'm just saying, like, he's got to do action stuff. I don't know, like how long the body can handle that. But Carl Urban, I don't even know how old he is. He's been perpetually 35 for like 2 decades.
do you think he's gonna have the Patrick Stewart thing where like just suddenly he got old?
I do. I think that's exactly what'll happen.
Where it's like for years we're gonna be like, oh, he doesn't age, and then suddenly it's like, oh man, he's aged a lot. But only in like the last year.
Colin Farrell has that too. I'm waiting to see him finally age.
Yeah.
Like, when does that happen? He and Carl Urban are exactly the same in that way.
Yeah, it's like those two, Paul Rudd and Keanu Reeves, I guess. They're like the
Yeah,
pinnacle of never aging.
because those guys have to be in their 50s at this point, right?
Mm.
I mean, I know Reeves is, but like surely Carl Urban and Colin Farrell, but they've both got to be in their 50s at this point.
Hmm. Well, and Keanu Reeves is funny because he's married. I think he's married to a woman that's like age appropriate, but it just looks funny because he's Keanu Reeves and he doesn't age. So you're like, wait a minute. Oh no, okay, no, that actually makes sense. But yeah, Dredd is a really fun movie. I don't know. I don't really have like anything deep to say about it. It's a fun action film. Kind of like it feels almost in a way like a precursor to like a John Wick.
Yeah, well, and that's another movie that's just really cool for, again, the simplicity of it.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah, exactly.
most of it, if memory serves, kind of takes place in one location.
Yeah, it's like a climbing the tower movie.
Yeah, like it feels bigger than it is,
Hmm.
and I really like movies like that. It just got a
Yeah.
really cool sense of style.
No, and there's so many things where I'm like, oh, just dread it. Like MCU Blade, just Blade walks into a town and there's like a Dracula castle like hunting over the town. Like that's it. That's your movie. It's the easiest thing to make.
That's
Uh,
what Last Ronin will be for Ninja Turtles. I mean, that's just a scaling the evil bad guy tower kind of story.
mhm. Yeah, it's so simple. We keep trying to do a Doom movie. Just dread it.
Stop it.
Yeah, exactly. Carl Urban even was the Doom guy and they messed it up.
My number 24 is Into the Spider-Verse. And every time I bring this movie up, I gotta talk about how I both love it and put it pretty high on my list, and also think it's kind of overrated. Overrated in
It's
the
fair.
sense that people like to put it at the absolute top, and I don't feel like it is the number one best superhero movie ever made. I do think that the two of those movies, because I have to put them up like right together, quality wise. I think Into and Across the Spider-Verse are both now the best representations we've had of the spirit and the ideals of what Spider-Man is supposed to be all about. So if Homecoming is the best interpretation we've had on the big screen of Peter Parker, and of specifically the classic Stan Lee Peter Parker, Into the Spider-Verse is the best representation, and it helps that it's animated, of just the comic flavor of that universe. And I have to give it huge props for doing Miles Morales' origin correctly, because I don't have the obsession with Miles Morales that a lot of people seem to, but I really like the early Bendis stuff. and I really like his origin. And then when we nixed the Ultimate Universe, we kind of took that away from him, and we contrived a way in making it the Spider-Verse thing, which I rolled my eyes at because I really hated that in comics, and I really hated all that Dan Slott stuff. But in making it a multiversal thing, we were able to bring that back and let Miles Morales take up the mantle of a dead Spider-Man again, and do his origin more or less the way it was in Ultimate, and make it actually a full-on character piece for that guy, but still have a really fun mentor, Peter Parker from another universe, at the same time. So I kind of got best of both worlds with that. I love the art style and the art direction with that. I love how inventive the animation is, and it's one of the best interpretations also of just what it feels like to read a comic book brought to I'm like falling apart at the seams here. I'm so tired.
He's breaking.
I just short circuited, I think. No, but it does a really good job of taking the experience of what it's like reading dynamic comic books to a moving medium. And I love what it does with sound effects, words, and stuff. It's just really fun and inventive. And some people feel like those movies are too cartoony and a little too kiddish. At least the first one. I think the second one, if you have that, kind of moves beyond that a little bit. But I really like the balance it has, the line it's walking in doing just really super goofy stuff, like with Spider-Ham, and still being pretty weighty and being pretty character driven, and letting bad things happen to characters. Like, it's got the kind of Spider-Man luck thing, which I really appreciate. And I also like just how well it sells me on the Spider-Verse idea, because I don't like that as a concept, and it does a really smart thematic thing with it, that kind of justifies the whole premise. And it makes MCU look even worse in the multiverse saga, because it puts that whole thing to shame and makes it feel like the multiverse with MCU has been a gargantuan waste of time, at least until you get to Deadpool, when it just dresses it down for being a gigantic waste of time.
Yep. Agreed with every point.
But not really, because you haven't watched those.
Really. No. Exactly.
For those of you that haven't heard, Austin has a hard time with that animation, so he just hasn't watched them.
Yeah, it messed with my eyes. But at the same time, I'm like, I also hate Spider-Verse stuff to such a degree where I'm like, I don't really want to watch them anyways. It's okay. But in a world
I did too, but it won me over. Now, also, we've gone round and round about this, but like, I am like inherently a multiverse guy. Like, when you do it right, it just isn't. It's just too gimmicky and isn't handled right a lot of the time. But that's a sci-fi concept that I always grew up being a big fan of. So I get excited about it when it's done well.
Well, and for me, it's not just like the multiverse aspect. Like, I hate other spider characters in general, like the clones and stuff. Like, to me, that just always takes away from what I like about Peter Parker, where he's just this kid that winds up in, this like grander sci-fi idea. But I feel like it completely takes away from him when it's like, oh, well, here's these other spider characters you can interact with. I'm like, oh, well.
No, that's usually my problem with it too, and I think if live action movies had captured more of what I like about that character in that world, I would not have been as enamored with it, probably. Mm-hmm. It's kind of sad that we had to go to other characters and a bunch of Spider-Mans from different universes before I felt like I was really full on looking at a Spider-Man thing, which is not fair to Homecoming, but there's still stuff it brought to that even Homecoming I didn't feel like had.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's fair. I don't know. I've seen one scene and it was the '60s Spider-Man scene, and I was like, oh, they made him a meme.
Yeah, well, that's just dumb after credits nonsense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he is like a character in the second one, but
I mean, yeah, but there's like 300 other ones, and it's not like they do anything with him. He's just there.
that's what I mean. Like, it's I don't know. Anyways, my 23 is the newest film on any of our lists. It's Hellboy: The Crooked Man, my favorite superhero film of last year.
I still haven't seen that yet.
Hmm. I really like the simplicity
I'm
of it.
shocked that's this high. Is that really that good?
I
Like,
really
I
liked
gotta
it.
be honest with you, I don't trust you on this at all.
I mean, that's fine. It's a movie made for me. Like,
Well, sure, but I just like I will be shocked. If I end up seeing that, I'm like, oh yeah, I get why you put it that high.
I mean, I went back and forth between it and Dredd, and then finally I was like, okay, but I'm more of a horror guy, so I'm gonna give it to Hellboy. Uh, Hellboy's also, my favorite comic book thing. Uh, Almost like it's like up at the top. It's like in the top five. I think it's just a really strong adaptation of that book. It The guy who plays Hellboy in it, Jack Casey, I think his name is. I think is my favorite actor to play him. It does a really good job of capturing that character. It's very small, like it is absolutely like on the B movie side, like in terms of budget and whatnot. But like I don't know, that doesn't really bother me. Like I like B movies, and yeah, I don't know. It's I think like by far the best superhero film of last year.
Yeah, because of the weird way that released, I ended up missing it, and I usually review these things when they come out, and that what I missed.
And I've also seen it a couple times, so it's not like I watched it once and was like, "Oh, that was great." Put it up at the top of my list. Like I watched it a couple times before I felt even comfortable putting it on my list.
Oh, sure. Yeah, when you'd been talking it up, I didn't actually expect it to show up that high on your list, and then I had completely forgotten about it. And so when you mentioned it, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. That's a thing that happened.
No, I mean the biggest issue with it is that it's definitely like a really low budget film, and like there's stuff that you can tell that they wanted to do but couldn't.
Yeah.
Like I know they wanted to CGI his eyes yellow because he doesn't have the yellow eyes, but they weren't able to. But it's like whatever.
Yeah, I mean, if the writing and the performances are good,
Yeah, exactly.
that'll take you through it.
Exactly, and it's one of those things where it's a very simple story. It's just a Hellboy, stumbles into a town and it's being attacked by witches. Basically,
Is he just climbing an evil tower the whole movie? Is that?
No, we don't have a tower.
Oh, okay. I know there's a train in that movie.
There is a train at in the opening. It's really funny because in the book it's just Hellboy walks into like a house and it's like we need a scene before that. So he's on a train and he falls off the train, and then he stumbles into the plot of the book.
Ryder puts in a $2 super chat and asks, should Wolverine variants have been in Act 3, 2 in Deadpool 3? I mean, that would have been a little bit too much stuff going on.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we really needed more of that. But
I mean, they've got that fun montage about that toward the beginning. I'm not sure.
Exactly.
I'm not sure what the point of that would have been, except to just have like
more.
a bunch of Wolverines fighting a bunch of Deadpools.
Well, if less is more, then think about how much more would be.
Oh well, sure. But I also feel like that would have maybe taken away from the kind of back and forth like attempt from both of those characters trying to make the big sacrifice at the end. I mean, I realize you have a bunch of Deadpools, but we kind of dispatch of them in a not all that funny way to me. I didn't really understand that joke, but like we you would have had to find a way to get rid of all the Wolverines also, and that's maybe harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably. But we got what we got. No, I don't know if it would make sense for that in that sequence.
Well, and there wasn't any part of me that went into that movie going, man, I sure hope I get a whole bunch of different Wolverines. Like I
Hmm.
knew the like bunches of Deadpool thing would happen, and I knew that even before it was advertised because that's such a like big joke in the comics over especially the last like decade and a half where like we just do a million Deadpools from different universes all the time. Like there's no way the third movie doesn't have a scene with a whole bunch of different Deadpools, and there it was.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, my number 23, I won't talk too much about because naturally it's related to my number 24. I put the Spider-Verse movies just right next to each other,
That's what I assumed.
I put a cross above into for really no other reason except they use my favorite like D-list Spider-Man villain and they did him really really well. I didn't expect to see that kind of treatment for the Spot ever, and I love him in that. And he's both kooky and menacing all at the same time. And it's really cool that, and he doesn't start off menacing, but he gets there, and I love that about it. And then it's 2099, and that's one of my favorite Spider-Man things. And so like that's the 1-2 punch for me. It's like they made that movie for me, and I wasn't super keen on the idea of 2099 being basically the villain of that piece, but it works out. It makes sense. He's just kind of misguided. He's not like the full on villain, but the way he's kind of chasing Miles Morales because he's gonna ruin universes because he's not supposed to actually be a Spider-Man. Works out fine. It's kind of a fun idea. One of the things I love about that movie is I the way it, and I've only seen it a couple times. I need to go back to it, but I the way it establishes and then really follows its rules and it's for how its multiverse works, and it's a bunch of really silly like arbitrary ideas, but it's really clever about it, and I like all of its kind of jargon, its terminology about that stuff. That movie's a little long. I kind of like 2 hours and 20 minutes for an animated feature is pretty lengthy, but I also kind of applaud it for having like enough meat to justify its runtime. Like I get why it's that long. It's just also sort of crazy to expect kids to sit through that, and then you're in this place where you're like, how much are they even thinking about kids? Like it, my kids love those movies. Like it is cool for children, but it also feels like just a like regular superhero movie for everybody that's kind of beyond live action or animation. And I didn't say this earlier, but that's the other thing I love about those, is I kind of forget that I'm watching an animated film while I'm watching them, and then I think I don't know if I need any of this stuff to be live action. Like let's just animate everything, and then I don't really mean this, but I sometimes feel this way, Austin, where it's like, despite the fact that that's in a style that, you find difficult to look at, if we animated more stuff, or more, like, comic adaptations, obviously it just allows you to go a lot farther visually with the sci-fi and fantasy ideas, and you're not held back by anything, and you don't have to worry about CG looking crappy, and you don't have to worry about not paying your CG artists enough to make things look good. Although that's apparently also a problem in animation.
And
So,
with
and with those specifically, yeah. So there's that, but
all animators are getting abused at the end of the day.
apparently so.
I don't know. That's what we do, I guess.
But I don't need live action to take these things seriously. That's all I'm saying.
Mm. No, I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. It would be cool if we got more animated superhero films.
Well, Austin, let's do at least one more, man.
Okay. My number 22 is Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
Yay.
Yippee!
That's my
We got
favorite
there.
MCU movie. Oh, there he is.
Oh, okay. I'm good now.
Yeah, you froze up on us.
Okay. Weird.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
So you picked Winter Soldier. That's all we know so far.
Yeah. Captain America: Winter Soldier is a really fun film. It's like I think easily the best Captain America movie.
Yeah, easily.
Easily.
And look, I'm hoping Brave New World is good, but there's kind
It's
of no
yeah.
chance it beats out Winter Soldier.
There's
I
no chance it beats out First Avenger. I think.
I mean, we'll see. My
Yeah.
worry is it will be a pale imitation of Winter Soldier because it looks like it really wants to be in that same kind of spy espionage vein, which is cool. I want another one of those, but
Yeah, exactly. When I don't know, I was saying today, like I remember when the trailers for Guardians 2 were coming out, and they were showing like quite a bit, but never really giving a sense of what the story was. And I remember at the time being like, "Oh, that's cool!" Like I have no idea what it's going to be going into it. And I feel like they've tried to do that with the new Cap movie, but I feel more so like I see them and I go, there's probably like nothing to this movie. And I think part of it is that they're advertising it really hard on Red Hulk, which
yeah.
is clearly just going to be the third act. And when you're advertising mostly your third act, and I could be wrong, like obviously, but I think that's like definitely what that's going to be. And I don't know. I think that's rough.
I'm worried about that too. But at least we can still go back to the glory days of Winter Soldier,
Yeah,
which came out
exactly.
the same year as Guardians. How crazy of a year was that, man?
Yep. Well, it's like I said in our history videos, like the even number years were better in the 2010s.
Well, and they look like they're firing on all cylinders then. Like, I don't know that they had a better year for quality than that.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think, because my mind went to 2016 and 17, but then like 17 is Ragnarok, so that bumps it down.
Yeah.
And then I like Doctor Strange and Civil War, but Winter Soldier's better than Civil War, and Guardians 1 is better than Doctor Strange. So yeah.
And Guardians and Winter Soldier are both like big game changers for the universe. And I don't think you have another year that has two movies that feel as important as those movies do.
While also feeling as different as they do.
Yeah, because like they're really innovative, and one of them is like adding these new major characters and opening up this whole other pocket of the universe. You know, getting us into cosmic, and then Winter Soldier is giving us this new giant status quo change
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
with the Hydra reveal. Which is one of the best kept under wraps revelations in anything.
Well, especially because they had the Shield show on at the time, and now, of course, we know more that like they weren't exactly communicating.
Yeah.
But
Because that would have
like,
been the last
wow.
thing you would greenlight if you knew you were going to do that very year.
Mhm.
And that just shakes up that whole season, which is funny because what you needed for that show to get less boring is for Shield to disband. It's hilarious.
Yeah, and even then,
Yeah, I know.
but it was, I mean, it was. Uh,
The big, you're in trouble when your biggest mystery in a superhero show is, and I've never understood this, is telepathy is supposed to be impossible, but there's a clairvoyant. How is that?
and I remember at the time being like, "Oh, well, it's good. We're finally doing something with the leader." Oh, I guess not. It's Bill Paxton.
Yeah, and he's great in that, but
Yeah, he's like the best part about it.
yeah, that last episode is actually legitimately kind of cool in the first season.
Hmm.
It was not necessarily worth the whole season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, talking about Winter Soldier.
Yeah, it's really good. It's the most I've ever liked Black Widow. She's great. Uh,
Yeah, and we
probably the
never
most
got
I've
back to that.
probably the most I've liked Falcon as well. Uh,
Sad to say, I mean, that movie is the reason I was a big Falcon fan.
mhm. Yeah, and that's why I said like probably because like I feel like it's the one he gets the most to do, and so like it's only because of that. Um, no, I feel like it's the first time the MCU got like actually creative with using Cap Shield too. Like and how they filmed it like in action scenes and whatnot. Uh, it's got really thrilling action. I think you can tell that the John Wick guys worked on sequences in that movie. Um, I do think that I wish it was a little bit more complex with its, talk about the like whole drone thing. I do think it's ultimately just here's like this drone thing we're gonna do, and that's bad, so we got to stop that. I do wish it was a little bit more complex, but I don't know the helicarrier stuff, and that's pretty fun. And I
You
at
you
least like
just
what they
you
did
just
with
mean with the discussion of what Hydra's plot is, like.
well, just in general. Like I feel like there's not enough of an argument for why that would be like a thing that Nick Fury would want. It's
Oh,
so
okay, okay.
I think like from the get-go it's so obviously a dumb idea and they don't give enough of that side that I'm like, okay, but where's the trade-off? Like it doesn't feel enough like a discussion where it's like, here's the stupid thing Nick Fury's doing. Yep, it was stupid.
So
I,
are you suggesting that makes Nick Fury kind of like dumbed down, where he should pick up on this is somehow a like manipulation plot because
so
because Shield is ultimately manipulated into doing a thing that as you say is kind of a really bad idea in trying to control everyone through drones, because like on paper I've always really appreciated the argument there.
hmm Yeah, and I think just for me, there's not enough of an argument, but like it is, I think, the best Nick Fury we've gotten in any of the movies. But it's also more on the side of their Nick Fury's never like especially great.
Well, just the
Uh,
whole like security freedom thing.
yeah, I need it to go more into that. Like I feel like it's just kind of surface level.
Well, I
Uh,
almost wonder if it's premature, because I will say it works better for me than it sounds like it does for you. But I can hear where you're coming from. I wonder if maybe just in the universe it's a little premature, where we don't have, sort of like um the silly idea you had in the first Suicide Squad movie of let's get all these metahumans together, except hardly any of them are metahumans, where it's like we've got to basically aim big guns at everyone on the planet at all times in order to keep people safe, and it's fine to basically take away people's freedoms because we're in this kind of like perpetual state of emergency now that we've got like superhumans and stuff, but we haven't had a lot of it yet.
hmm Yeah, and I mean, the last film literally had the
That's sort of the excuse
helicarrier
I
got
think
get taken
Hydra's
over.
making.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, what?
No, I said in the last film, with this stuff and these characters had the helicarrier get taken over and like taken out. So like you also have that aspect of it too if you're gonna bring in the overall world. But there's also like weird stuff in Winter Soldier where like the twist is really good, but there's things that don't entirely make sense. Like it's both building off of things from the previous movies and adding kind of weird universe plot holes. But like the movie's good, so like it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Um, like the big one is like the whole Tony's downloading all of Shield's files thing. But
I always forget about that.
yeah, like there's like weird stuff like that. I guess if you're gonna look at it, from a universe perspective. But like I said, at the end of the day, like the movie's good, so like whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of worth it for the sake of the piece. And I
Hmm.
think they did the best job they possibly could in making it feel like all roads were going there when they just made it up for that movie.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
the
exactly.
characters that they picked retroactively to have always been Hydra agents were the right calls.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely.
And like we've
I
talked
do
about
wish
Zola's
Hawkeye was in that
involvement, that
movie
whole
though.
thing was
But
really great. Yeah, where is Hawkeye in that movie?
mhm. That's like the big like he should have also been in this movie, but
It's
that's
it's
okay.
also the best mileage we ever got out of Nick Fury. Also, I
Yeah,
like I'm with you on
easily.
Black Widow, but that like he was fun enough, but I felt like was almost too much like comic relief in Iron Man 2. And then you get a Winter Soldier and we get real serious and weighty and down to earth and I and I really appreciated getting into his worldview and why he is so extreme about compartmentalization uh and control and
Mhm.
all of that. And I like how mysterious we still in that movie keep his background. So he'll give us pieces, and he's kind of an unreliable narrator. Like you never know how much you can buy about what he's talking about. Like, uh, do we really believe the story he tells about his grandfather with the gun? Like he could have made that up. That might not even be a real thing. I don't know. Uh, but
Yeah.
not getting into like how he lost his eye, but that being a gigantic motivation for why he doesn't trust anyone is great. And then we completely ruin it later uh,
Hmm.
with
Yeah.
with Captain Marvel, which just hurts my feelings. But
Well, Winter Soldier is like the one place where I feel like he really gets to play a character with Nick Fury. Where I feel like every other time he's there, it's just I don't know, do you like Sam Jackson-y thing? They just be cool.
you're right,
That's
and he
that's
turns
your
into a real
character.
character in that.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only time we ever really do anything with him. And I also feel like retroactively, like it's fine in the movie, but like retroactively as a franchise, we probably should have just killed him off in that movie. Like
I
they had
agree.
nothing else to do with him.
I was actually weirdly kind of let down in the theater first time out when it turns out he's still alive. And I felt
Mhm.
weird about it because I was like, well, I don't guess I should wish this character was dead, but I felt a little deflated where I where I was like, I don't know, it works dramatically well enough in the piece, but I was like, it felt like anything could happen in this movie, and now it doesn't.
Mhm. No, and I think they set up like such an interesting place for Nick Fury for the end of that film.
Yeah.
Never followed up
Never
on.
did anything with it. Yeah, well, and I think that's the reason that I was okay with the death fake out because he has such a good arc.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. If he doesn't show up at all in Age of Ultron, and we did something else with him instead, uh, like it works
Well,
fine.
how
It's just
interesting
that.
could a solo Nick Fury movie have been in shortly after that with that status quo?
Mhm. Yeah, like we should have gotten that, some sort of like Steranko Nick Fury type thing. Just anything really.
Yeah, or at least done some kind of like restarting Shield movie or something where it's primarily a Nick Fury character vehicle, but then we also include at least Black Widow and Hawkeye.
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like the two biggest missteps with Nick Fury as a character is doing nothing with him after Winter Soldier, and B, not casting a younger actor for Captain Marvel that you then could have given, say, like a Disney Plus show about like the beginnings of Shield. Um, those are like the two biggest missteps for that character for me.
Sorry, all of a sudden my my pages have broken on me.
Oh no,
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
weird.
But I'm back. Ryder put in a $2 super chat and says, "Did Hulk and Ant Man need to be taken out of Avengers 3?"
Uh, I mean, not necessarily, but I mean, Ant-Man, I don't think you really needed him in that one, but
No, I mean Ant Man's like not even really an Avenger, especially at that point.
mhm. Yeah, and I mean, and Hulk, it just depended on how they landed that, and They
Yep,
didn't.
and
So
they didn't, unfortunately. I think we were all kind of drawing a big question mark about the way he was written out with Ultron. Like, well, I guess we'll see where this goes. And then Ragnarok happened. So yay. But I like the way Ant-Man is utilized pretty well in Endgame, despite some of my reservations about that movie. And that doesn't work as well if he's a full-on Avenger before that, I don't think.
hmm
You know, and I like him quite a bit in Civil War too.
yeah, he's fun in Civil War, which is like all he really needs to be. But like he works. He gets to be big. What is your number 22?
Oh yeah, I've still got to do one more, don't I?
Yeah.
Oh, well, speaking of those movies, my 22 is Infinity War.
Oh, okay, there you go. For some reason, I thought you'd already said that, but I guess not.
No, I must have done Endgame already, right?
Yes.
Because I mean, I would have put that over Endgame. I'm checking to see what the number was because I don't remember.
Yeah.
It looks like I had it relatively low. I can't find it right off, and my eyes are glazing over, so I don't know.
Oh, well, it's somewhere.
But I assume we already talked about this some, right? Because you probably already mentioned it.
Yeah, I had it at 52.
I had it. I had Endgame, I think, higher than 52, but I can't find
Well,
it.
I I used to have Infinity War over Civil War, but I think at this point, like, with how Endgame drops the ball, like I still really like Infinity War, but I think just that aspect puts Civil War over it for me.
I agree with that completely. And I can't say I'm showing my hand because I haven't said Civil War yet.
As far as I know, anyways.
so there you go. I No, I wish Endgame had stuck the landing a little bit better as well. And I've always talked about Infinity War and Endgame as more or less a part one and part two, but they do have, and I think this is a credit to both of them, a clear enough beginning and end point, each of them, that they are kind of watchable separately. And
The Lord of the Ringsy in that way, where it's
yeah,
like there are like their own little separate things going on in each movie, but they are a whole at the same time.
and unlike Lord of the Rings, I think they also both have kind of different flavors,
hmm
and that makes Infinity War kind of fun for me to go back to, even if I don't feel like watching Endgame right after it. Infinity War is a little bit more fun and playful, especially at the beginning to the middle, than Endgame is, and at the same time, it's also a little bit more sober and serious in the ways it needs to be, where Endgame goes off the rails a little bit, particularly with Thor, which we've probably already talked about some.
hmm
But despite my issues with Thanos as a character, which we've already talked about and I won't get into again, I love Brolin's presence in that, and Thanos' initial introduction, and that I think is really good. I wish we did more fun stuff with his powers, but what's there is fine. I like the way the Guardians are integrated more than you do. I think they're written a little bit more consistently with the Guardians movies than you do. That's just a point of contention we have.
I mean, it depends on the character. For me, it's mostly Star-Lord.
Oh, okay, fair enough. But that's what I'm saying is I didn't have that as much with him, but
Mhm.
I get your complaints with that. I just didn't come
And
to it myself.
it's worse in Endgame, even though
I
he's in it for like one scene.
I think that movie juggles the character count incredibly well. I don't think it feels like it's runtime. I think a lot of the action in that looks better than quite a bit of other MCU action around it, even though I don't like that that Thanos' henchmen, what are they, the Black Guard or whatever they're called? I can't remember
Black
anymore.
Order.
There it is, the Black. I couldn't remember. I've never loved that all of them have to be like CG in the face, because I just don't understand why that can't just be makeup. Like I've never gotten that.
I think they're like 9, like 10 feet tall, I think is why that is, but
Yeah, but I've always
I don't
had
know.
this with that kind of thing where you can fudge size and not have to fully CG a face, because you'll get close-ups on the faces and they have a weird uncanny valley thing, and I'm like, why can't we at least not animate it in the close-ups? I've never understood that. That's a minor quibble. I don't even know why I'm bringing it up right now. But that's the one of those two that I've most enjoyed going back to. Obviously, it's not perfect. Besides just the Thanos thing, I've never really cared for. I don't know why I'm criticizing right now. It's my 22. But one of the things that because I don't know if I've talked about this much, that I've never loved about Infinity War is Doctor Strange and Iron Man's initial meeting. I don't like how at each other's throats they are right away. I always felt like that was a little forced.
I feel like there's some awkward dialogue in their
Yeah,
first scene in the Sanctum. Outside of that, like I'm fine with their dynamic, but I do think there's some awkward dialogue in that initial
it's
sequence.
an idea that makes more sense on paper than I think in the execution. Well, I think the idea is maybe they are too similar to get along.
Mhm.
Where the idea was when we finally, I think when we finally put them on screen together, let's just attack head on the issue of MCU Tony Stark's characterization is basically comic book Stephen Strange. So let's just attack that on the screen. Like that's a cool idea. I don't love the way it plays though.
Mhm. I'm glad we didn't get the like fan demanding moment where we get a no Sherlock moment between the two of them because they both played Sherlock Holmes. Thank God that didn't happen. That was a thing like people really wanted to see. It would
Oh
have been
my god.
cringy.
So I'm going to read Bob the Hunt super chat, but I'm not going to talk too much about it because I've already discussed this, and I don't want to get into it with people again. But I do agree with him wholeheartedly on this. He says Thanos is the cliche that involves having to kill a bunch of people for the greater good, even though if his motivation wasn't stupid, it would still be cliche.
Um, I had another thing to say off of that Doctor Strange bit you were saying.
Oh yeah, sure.
Oh yeah, no, I also subscribe to the theory that Doctor Strange just hated Tony, and that's why he had him killed. But you know,
You think he was? You think he was maybe fudging that like only one possible way we win thing?
yeah, because he was like very specific, like, "Oh, Tony, you gotta kill yourself. It's the only way."
There can only be one initially gigantic narcissist superhero in this universe, and I'm going to be that guy.
Mhm.
Even though that attitude, based on his origin story, should make it impossible for him to use his powers. But whatever.
No, Infinity War gave me the one thing that I wanted from like an Avengers film, which is a team fighting one villain.
Yeah,
And it's sad that only one of them actually has that. But the Titan fight's really cool.
that's a good point. Well, and I guess the main reason I have it this high, I should have said this earlier, is it gave me that feeling that Avengers in the first place did that I didn't think could be captured again. And Civil War sort of did it too. Where it was like once again feeling like I'm seeing a big event comic put on the big screen for the first time. They each do it in different ways.
Mhm.
So it's almost like I'm seeing different kinds of those happening. Where with Avengers, it's the first time you're just getting characters from different movies all in one place, and so that's a new experience. And then with Civil War, and I don't want to be superficial and say finally superheroes fighting each other, but like that kind of big like conflict between them, and just having that many characters all together and given that much screen time made it feel like I was, reading a big superhero event comic and didn't think I would ever have that experience. And then Infinity War did it again.
Mhm. Yep, that is true. Also, I just had this thought. Speaking of the weird Doctor Strange dialogue in that first sequence, Some of the most awkward Tony lines are in that first scene with Pepper as well, where he stops her and he's like, "From now on, no more surprises. That's what we're doing." I had a dream that we had a baby. Oh, that's
Oh
really
yeah,
weird.
yeah, that was kind of odd. Also, there's a little bit of that issue of movies and creators not quite talking to each other.
Mhm.
Like, isn't it odd that Spider-Man has a clear spider sense and seems to understand what it does, and then you get to his next movie, and spider sense seems to be this brand new concept.
So I remember when Homecoming came out, and the director was like, "Oh, he doesn't have spider sense," and people were like, "Oh, the MCU Spider-Man doesn't have spider sense. That's bull." And I'm like, "What do you mean? There's like so many scenes in the MCU, both in Homecoming and Civil War, where he's clearly using spider sense."
Yeah, I don't get it.
And
And
then
then
that
in Infinity War,
Far From Home, it's really weird.
they literally have his arm hair stand on end, and then he responds like he knows how to use his spider sense.
I remember
They
getting
put
into
it in the trailer.
I remember getting into a fight with someone over Homecoming where there's a scene on the ferry where Shocker runs up behind him, goes to punch him. Spider-Man's eyes widen and he ducks. And I'm like, he has spider sense, like right there. And the person was like, no, the director said he didn't have spider sense in this movie, therefore. And I'm
Yeah,
like, but
who cares? Then how do you explain
it's
what you're
right
seeing
there.
right now? Like, what is that? And Dan Schneider, I think everybody agrees that Infinity War is the best there ever was, or at least I've not talked to anybody that doesn't hold that opinion.
Yeah, I think Dan might still put the first Thor over it, but I agree.
Well, I've got a kid crying upstairs, so I should go see what's going on with that. But I'm just suddenly realizing, so I'm gonna go check into that. I don't know that my wife has woken up yet. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show. We will be back soon with another one of these. It's gonna take us 2 or 3 more to get through everything at least. But we're taking our time. We're having fun with it. I hope you guys are too. And in the meantime, thanks for joining us. I was Captain Logan, and this was Austin, the Day Ghost.
See ya, folks.
Good night, folks.